God, is this real? Hey Greg, come look at this. Oh my, it's happening. Mr. Daniels, the numbers keep getting bigger and bigger.
Sir, the clicks are off the charts.
Hello, sales? What's the emergency? 9,000 clicks in one day? 3,000 order? So how much we have left? What? I soon call you back. Mr. Nakamoto, it's Danny from Jamaica. I need 5,000 of the big ones. We're back in business.
Yes, sir. Arigato. Suene. Amplify your brand. Let Nationwide 90 FM assist you in tapping into a captivated audience across our social media platforms. For more information, contact us at 876-630-1210 or sales@nationwidenewsnetwork.com. Businesses, companies, and entrepreneurs, let's supercharge your brand.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what a joy. Oh, what a peace. How great this country could be.
Happy, today's what, Monday?
Monday.
Yes, so happy Monday to all our listeners and the subscribers on the Nationwide YouTube platform and those who are also joining us via the JFJ YouTube platform. We're certainly happy that you continue to be with us. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
So we have some serious issues to discuss today, as we usually do. But we're going to be having some light moments at some point because we're going to be giving you some updates on our Run for Rights that will be... Oh, my Nicholas will have my neck for this. December 8th.
Yes.
Sunday, yes. So I'll give you some update on that particular issue. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So... how are we doing this? The week that was?
Yes, indeed.
All right. So, as some of you may know, we are supporting the mother of Mario Dean. Her name is Miss Mercia Fraser. And she has been fighting for justice for her son, who died while in the custody of the state in August 2014. Mm-hmm. He was beaten and he died 3 days later at the hospital, Cornwall Regional Hospital. Now, we are aware that persons with mental illness, I believe, my recollection here, were charged with the crime, but we're not focusing on those three men at the moment. We're focusing on the police officers who are involved. So that particular portion of the case continues. We are also aware that for several years now, certainly in the past 2 years at least, we have seen the matter being adjourned, the trial not being able to commence due to a juror shortage. We spoke about that extensively in weeks prior, indicating that in some instances, in our estimation, and certainly from what we saw being unfolded during the court proceedings, that the police simply was not doing enough to ensure that the juror summons were in fact being served. In fact, the case, the last court date before, what we heard was that 300 summons were in fact prepared. Not one of the 300 were ever served. And I think we can collectively say that that is clearly an injustice that continues to plague the system. But let's fast forward to last week, which is what we're doing the week that was. We saw the matter finally being granted an approval from the judge to be transferred to the Westmoreland Circuit Court from St. James.
Yes.
And the case comes up for mention February 17, 2025.
Yes.
So at that court date, what we can expect is that the trial date would be discussed and a trial date would be announced. And I think what we're asking for here from JFJ is to ensure that the trial itself commences during the court session. Yes?
Within that next circuit session.
Yes. And I think while we welcome the transfer, because from what we're told, Westmoreland will see a better chance of having, a greater juror turnout. What we're asking for, though, is for the police by Westmoreland to do much better than their colleagues in St. James did. We're also calling for the police and the registrar of the court to work together to put together that team of process server that will see, better collaboration being undertaken to ensure that you have enough summons being served and more people actually turning up for jury duty so that the trial can get underway. I think that is our call. The transfer is good, welcome one, but I think we have to ensure that we have the police doing their work. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. No more with that was?
No, we have some other things to discuss because we are aware that Indicom, had some good outcomes since week. Another travesty of justice there. But we will discuss that towards the end of the program.
All right, great. So we have our right of the day, and we also have 2 trivia questions today, as we will continue to have until the end of the year, celebrating our 25th anniversary. But we'll start with the right of the day for today. It comes from the Constitution, Section 13.3h, and it speaks to the fact that every person in Jamaica has the right to equitable and humane treatment by any public authority in the exercise of any function. And a public authority essentially means a agency, a state agency, anyone that receives public funds would have to treat each person in Jamaica with equitable and humane treatment. All right, so we do have our trivia question. Our first trivia question is our normal trivia. And that question is, what agency is responsible for the management of correctional facilities? I know, keep in mind, I did not say lockups because that's the police. I said correctional facilities. So, and our 25th anniversary trivia question.
That's like I give a multiple choice question, Jade, and X out one of the answers already.
Right? Our multiple choice trivia question now. Multiple choice. Our 25th anniversary trivia question now. So we're asking today. Well, we're about to ask, in which year did the Privy Council rule in favor of JFJ, stating that comprehensive investigations into police conduct are essential before promotions are granted? That sounds complicated.
Yeah, but just to put in context quickly for the listeners before our guests come on, we continue to challenge matters before the court. So that was one of the cases that we started. I'm giving you some hints now. We started in 2017 for that particular matter. The Police Federation, they pushed back and it went all the way to the Privy Council in England. So, we had to hint to the listeners who want to contribute to JFJ. That is part of the good work that we continue to do. So you can Google and come up with a response based on what I said. We started in 2017 and it went all the way to the Privy Council. The Privy Council ruled with the JFJ on that particular matter, and it involved the Police Federation.
All right.
Do you want to just read it once more, the question?
Yes, I can read it once more. So in what... Oh, okay.
You have it in WhatsApp?
Yes, I do. Okay, so...
I think I'm going to block news commentator one of these days, She's just too bright.
She's getting everything correct already. We haven't even started. Okay, so...
It's on the screen, Jade,
okay.
if you can see
In
it.
which year did the Privy Council rule in favor of JFJ, stating that comprehensive investigations into police misconduct are essential before promotions are granted?
All right. So that is it. So let's move on to the business at hand. Today we're discussing the issue in terms of the state of our lockup. And the title of officially that we have here is the inhumane lockup conditions. And we're going to be joined by Carlo Golato, who's the executive director of Stand Up for Jamaica, Matthew Hyatt, attorney at law, no stranger to the show, I'm happy to say, and Miss Renee Fremantle, also an attorney at law, attorney at law.
And I'm hearing no stranger to Nationwide. I think she previously did a program on Nationwide.
Nice. Okay, great. I wish she was here with us in person. Now, we've seen some of the experiences over the years. Agana Barnett, one of 5 men who died while in the custody of the police because of the overcrowding. So we know that the lockup conditions in Jamaica, severe overcrowding, poor sanitation, and inadequate health care. Many of these facilities are reported to exceed capacity, forcing detainees into cramped spaces with limited access to clean water and proper ventilation. So we know that we also have vulnerable groups such as juveniles and persons with mental illness who are particularly affected and lacking appropriate care and support.
Now, we do have our international or regional and or constitutional obligations that should see an improvement in these standards. However, the progress has been quite slow. There's been limited allocation of resources, and where reforms are implemented, the implementation has not been the strongest. So we want to know now, what are these systemic issues that are arising in the lockups? What have we observed, our attorneys or human rights advocates, and how can we start to address these issues in a fundamental way? So I believe we're joined by our 3 guests now. Miss Carla Galata, Mr. Matthew Hyatt, and Miss Renee Fremantle. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Good afternoon to all 3 of you. Thank you so
Good
much.
afternoon.
We know some of the names. Agana Barnett, that particular case happened in 1992. Here we are in 2024. Still hearing, I believe, a couple of months ago that at least 6 persons died while they were in police custody. So let me start with you, Matthew Hyatt. What can you describe for our listeners in terms of the state and the conditions of the lockups?
The state of our lockups is certainly deplorable. And I'm being charitable when I use that language. It is one that I have believed is and has been neglected by the state. And we have to remember that even persons who are in the lockups now, and I'm not talking about the prisons, there are persons who are being held on remand, and there are persons whose presumption of innocence must prevail. It's so easy to get in the lockups. I can be driving tomorrow and I'm in an accident and I hit down someone, God forbid, and the police may take me to the lockups. And the state that the lockup is in, it is absolutely horrible. I mean, we're talking about overcrowding, at least 8 persons in a very small cell, no light, no electricity, no bedding. We're talking about hard, cold concrete. And this is a state of the lockups right throughout the country. I believe maybe one of the best I've seen or I've heard about is the Grand Spend police station. And that particular lockup is reserved mainly for police officers who are arrested, and they keep them there. But right across the island, the lockups is in a very deplorable state, and I think it has always been neglected from time immemorial, and I think the same atmosphere presents itself even today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ms. Fremantle, Mr. Hyatt said something, and I want you to clarify for the listeners, because sometimes we're of the view that once you come in contact with the police, you're this hardened criminal that ought not to be, in receipt of any rights recognition whatsoever. So if you could just break down to the listeners, what are some of the, what you would call it now, the lesser offenses that could possibly see you, being placed in any lockups?
Sure. There are offenses that I would consider lesser. The more serious offenses like murder, of course, rape, illegal possession of firearm. You have those lesser offenses like malicious destruction of property, or even traffic offenses where you might be taken in for one reason or another. There's a little distinction that I would want to make between a lockup per se and a prison.
Yes, thank you.
Prison, it's essentially where a person having been convicted would be serving their sentences, whereas a lockup is a situation where you may be held for questioning, you're held pending charge. Now, I was very grateful for Matthew for outlining, the plight of persons in lockups and in prisons. There's not much of a difference in terms of the conditions. And Matthew actually forgot about the roaches and the chinks, right? The infestation of vermin and the fact that prisoners don't have adequate sanitary conveniences. I did a case once where my client told me that in serving 3 years of a 25-year sentence, he was actually forced to defecate on cardboard papers and different plastics and throw the feces through the window in the night. That is what they do. They urinate in bottles. I remember the first time I went to a lockup as a young attorney, I was horrified. Back then I never had much stomach, huh? Now I'm a little more, rougher. But back then I was horrified to see persons drinking soup out of a bucket. These are persons in the lockup. Everybody had their own little containers dipping in this bucket, and it was quite normal, though I was shocked for seeing it for the first time. So I think the importance of your question a while ago is that we as citizens, we all have to be concerned about the conditions of lockups, because you might not end up in a prison. But if it is that you are accused of a crime, and any one of us can be accused of a serious offense or what we call less serious offenses, you might find yourself subjected to these very conditions.
Thank you so much. Let us take the break and we pick up.
Get it all in one go. Download and sign up now. The time by the 1JN Passport app is
1:17.
Me grow past my granny I save her money under her mattress.
But at an old time something. That's where I save my money in the bank. And become I want to buy a little house, we also save in a building society. We have to be smart with how we save our money.
So what if the bank crash?
Well, that's where JDIC comes in. Make I tell you something. With the JDIC Deposit Insurance Scheme, once you save your money in a commercial bank, merchant bank, or building society, your deposit is covered up to a maximum of $1.2 million per depositor per financial institution if the institution fails. All the information that you need is available at jdic.org, and you can follow their social media platform for more information.
JDIC, protecting deposits for you and me. Music a play and the people a rock. Everybody asks for the Calico Jack. What you know? Purchase 4 Calico Jack 250 milliliter or 2 Calico Jack 1 liter, and you could be a winner in the Calico Jack Christmas Treasure Promotion. Grand prize $500,000 plus winners of $25,000 supermarket vouchers every week. Check our Facebook and Instagram pages at Calico Jack JA for details on how to enter. Promotion runs November 1 to December 29. Cups up, make a party. Rum for cinema. Authorized under Section 58 of the Betting Gaming and Lodges Act.
Unique Living's new arrivals are here. Revamp your space with sleek, fixed and sliding show panels, shower systems and faucets, stylish vanities, basins and kitchen sinks, closet and storage solutions, hanging aids and more. Available in different finishes and sizes to match your style. Visit them today and transform your space at shop number 630 Dunrobin Avenue, Kingston 10. Call 876-755-3661 or visit their website at uniquelivingja.com to shop.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We've been discussing inhumane lockup conditions with Mr. Matthew Hyatt, Miss Renee Fremantle, and Miss Carla Golota. And I wanted to pick up with you, Carla. As the Executive Director of Stand Up for Jamaica, I know Stand Up has done a lot of work in lockups and correctional facilities. What are some of the issues that you have observed from your clients and respondents?
Thank you very much. I am happy for this interview because I think that it needs to be considered an emergency. And there are various elements which I wish to discuss today. The first one is, as everybody knows, this situation has been lasting since years. But I need also to bring to your attention the amount of reports which have been released. There are reports from the JPs because you know that they have regularly visit lockups. And the last report was dated 2 months ago, and it was ringing the bell one more time about the unhealthy condition, the overcrowding, the lack of food, the lack of possibility to use a restroom and therefore need to urinate and defecate in the middle of the place. It's a report which is the third report from JPs in the last year and 3 months. Then there was another recent report from a team of attorneys which have been working in the lockups and visited the lockups regularly, and they basically stated the same things. So not only the situation is pending and remains the same since years, but whatever report presented to the Minister of Justice, the Minister of National Security, etc., has basically totally dismissed and ignored. And I think this is an element which also should be taken in consideration because those people are in charge for inspecting lockups. That is one. Secondly, there is an increase also overcrowding due to the SOE because the state of emergency or the curfews allow police to detain people without following the traditional protocol. And that has been significantly increased the amount of people which are detained, especially in crucial areas. There is one, for example, police station, which is in Montego Bay in Barnett Street, which has 3 times the population they are supposed to have. And I think that is another thing that we should be taking in consideration, that when you call an SOE, the collateral is the fact that you increase the population of the lockups. And most of them are detained for 2-3 days, and then they are released without any form of charge. So that is another element which I want to bring to light. Another element, again, is how difficult it is for the most fragile to be confined in a lockup. I want to mention, first of all, the mentally ill. There is quite an amount of people which are mentally ill, and usually police pick them up in the street at night. They are in need of medication, and they won't have any access to their medication because they won't be able to go to the infirmary or the hospital or the health department where they usually receive a treatment. I'm talking specifically about those which have epilepsy attack, which are schizophrenic, or have some other form of diseases which are not related to mental illness, but chronic disease, such as diabetes, for example. They should get an injection, they should get their tablets, so they won't be able to receive that form of health assistance. And it is an hazard because you put people at risk for their life if they're not properly treated.
You touched something, Carla. I want to segue to hold that thought for me. But you touched something very critical because remember Kamosa Clark. I think he had some mental disorder, if you remember, again, beaten.
Yeah.
while he was in the custody of the state. So, Mr. Hyatt, let us pick up here with you. What concerns do you have based on the challenges that Ms. Golota highlighted just now? Persons with medical conditions, mental illness, what concerns do you have there? And I will ask Ms. Fremantle to also follow your comments with what rights do people have in that regard, and how do we ensure that these rights are being protected?
Well, firstly, I must say that the lockups and the police officers, there is not any sufficient area for the treatment of these persons. Even within the prisons where they have a so-called medical facility, it's still not sufficient. I had a case once where my client, he was not fit to plead, and the judge, having assessed that, he was 92 years, of course, that, called Bellevue, they said that they could not assist the prisons. It was, of course, not feasible to lock up a 92-year-old man at Tower Street in the condition that he had. So that facility is not existing. There are persons who are suffering from grave medical illnesses and need immediate medical attention. And they have said, I have notified the police officers that I have to go to the doctor. And there are some officers who I would say sit idly by and watch them deteriorate. We have seen in the past couple of weeks where persons have died as a result of illnesses they have possibly contracted. And so when we talk about the medical care, it is almost non-existent, apart from when somebody beats you severely and you're bleeding profusely from your head, they will bring you to the KPH hospital or so on. But other than that, it is not there, and that presents a great difficulty in the lockups for persons who are detained who have medical issues. In terms of the mental illness aspect of things, we don't even have proper facility outside of the lockups to deal with that. So if we don't have it outside, how can we have it inside? And that is a great concern to me. Ms. Golota had spoke about police officers, and I just want to touch on this, that they just willy-nilly go and without proper investigation, persons locked up within our lockups, and then 2-3 days after they are released. And we see a lot of persons getting affected by this, and we see it through the several malicious prosecutions claims, the false imprisonment claims, and they have spoken at length about the detention and the conditions that they're in. And that is why, if it is that the police, from the police officers, if it is that they don't take the necessary precautions, ensuring that they do proper investigation before locking up persons, the state is going to suffer. And the taxpayers will be suffering because they're the ones who have to pay out for these malicious prosecutions claims.
Yeah. Ms. Fremantle, similar observation from your end? And what are some of the rights that we know people have that they should assert in this respect?
Absolutely. I would have to start with the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. And unfortunately, in these cases, especially cases of persons who are suffering from mental illness, these are the most vulnerable, along with children in our society. And in terms of how they're treated, sometimes we as a public, the different arms of the state, it would appear if the public came to the view that we have forgotten that they're citizens and that they have rights. No one could argue based on how they're treated. The constitutional rights that are affected by this discourse that we're having now are the rights to life, liberty, security of the person, the right to a fair trial within a reasonable time, the right to protection of the law, and the protection against torture and inhumane treatment, and also due process of law. What we have seen happen, unfortunately, in the past decades is that you have vulnerable persons, like persons with mental illnesses, that will come before the court, often without counsel. And this is where, they become even more vulnerable. So it will be apparent that they are unfit to plead based on what they're showing to the court, the effects of their illness. So, for example, if a prisoner, if a accused person has a severe case of schizophrenia and is unable to really communicate with the court, it is not uncommon for the court to order that he be held until he's fit to plead, or at least that a psychiatric report, or that he be evaluated to see if he's fit to plead, is what I should say. And then what happens is that there are certain rights that this person does have that is already embedded in the law that unfortunately in the past, more so today, are being complied with given the mass media and the publicity surrounding this issue. So for example, there are actually laws that says that there are periodic reports and reviews that should be done by the court, that there is actually a requirement to keep the cells clean.
All right, Ms. Fremantle, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought right there. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to ask all the guests to stay with us until after the break when we wrap up. Thank you.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
31 degrees Celsius in both Kingston and Montego Bay.
Outperform, outlast. With top performance. Jackama. Reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electrician. Fancy select tools, 3 parts and 3 repairs. 3 parts, 3 repairs. In 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-6111-4. Delta Supply, we service what we sell.
Are you ready to turn your sales and marketing skills into high earnings? Nationwide 90FM is searching for business development executives to build lasting client relationships. If you have experience across all stages of the sales cycle and possess strong communication, negotiation, and time management skills with a proven sales track record, this opportunity is perfect for you. Join our team and work with the top corporate brands, media agencies, and of course, our on-air personalities. Enjoy networking opportunities, professional growth, and competitive commissions. Ready to take the next step? Send your resume to hr@nationwidenewsnetwork.com today.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're discussing the inhumane lockup conditions, and Ms. Fremantle was informing us of some of the obligations that exist in terms of how these lockups should be kept. Ms. Fremantle, if you could pick up on that thought for me, please.
Right. There is actually the correctional institution rules that states that a medical officer is responsible for inspecting every part of the correctional center. And that would definitely include where mentally ill prisoners are located. There is a right to medical evaluations. They're actually supposed to be evaluated periodically to see what the progress, if any, is. There's a right to the proper medication, of course. What we find is that I'm handling a case right now which has shed a lot of light on the issues in these matters. So, for example, obtaining medical records, quite difficult to get, and it lends to the belief that maybe there are no records to obtain. You don't know if these persons are receiving the treatment that they ought to. You don't know if they're getting better or if the circumstances are getting worse. I don't know if I'm being cynical here, but if persons who go to these lockups and these prisons in deplorable conditions come out with psychiatric problems, you can only imagine what would happen to a person who is kept in those conditions where they already have psychiatric difficulties. So enforcing these rights, you go through the courts. The challenge, though, with enforcing these rights in the courts is that you find that depending on the level of the mental illness, the person might not be in a position to give evidence. I'm handling a matter right now where the client's schizophrenia is so severe that it is virtually impossible for evidence to come from that person. So you have to be finding other ways where the evidence is admissible to shed light
And
on
this
what
person is
he has
detained?
gone through. This person was detained for over 20 years and is now unable to really speak about what happened. So you can just imagine the difficulty in advancing that case.
You know, before we go to Carla Golato, because I want to ask Ms. Golato very briefly what is improving. But Mr. Hyde, you know, pre-trial detention periods,
Yes.
on average, how long can you see somebody be detained for while they await trial? And what exactly do we need to fix in that respect? And before you answer, I was on a session, I will talk about that briefly, talking about one of the recommendations that Caribbean leaders have pledged to say that once you are charged with a crime, your trial should commence within a year. But we're saying that that is not the case. So if you could just explain to the listeners for me, pre-trial detention and why this particular issue is so, you know, alarming for us here.
Well, it all depends on the type of charge, the type of case. I've seen where persons are locked up well beyond 2-3 years waiting for their trial. And of course, I know that we all know that there have been many other cases where persons have been locked up for well over 6-7 years waiting for trial. And so you are almost lost in the system, and I would say even forgotten. And there has to be systematic checks to see where each particular case is, and to ensure that citizens are not left behind, and especially the mentally ill. These are cases that persons are sitting in the lockups, lamenting, suffering at the hands of the state. It is a condition that has to be addressed, and I feel as if we have been talking about this issue, and we have been complaining, yet there has been no real substantial change. I know that there is an arm at the Ministry of Security, the Inspectorate, that goes into the prisons across the island, and they interview the inmates, they sit down, they discuss the conditions, and they do their reports. I know that Indicom does that as well for the lockups. And I know that the reports have been filed, but when we look at the recommendations that are made in these reports versus what happens in the lockup, it is as if it has remained the same. And so when we talk about changes, sometimes we have to think about, if they're even operating from a political perspective. We had an opportunity to have a new prison being built, and that one was turned down. I am still hearing talks of a new prison being built, but I am yet to see that come to fruition.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate, because I've always said that the Tower Street facility, for example, which is the prison now, that is a building that was used to trade slaves, and it has not been improved upon significantly since. We're still seeing the red bricks, and the property itself is dilapidating. The same water that the inmates have to use to wash their clothes is the same pipe water that they're drinking. There are no facilities for them to pass their feces. They have to be using buckets. When they had the COVID pandemic, some had to be resorting to socks and plastic bags.
Mr. Hyatt, as you're describing the prison condition, I wonder if there is a significant difference between the conditions in the lockup versus the prisons, because that's often what we hear, that the prisons are...
take that one, yeah.
Okay.
There is no real difference. In fact, the lockup, I have heard, is even worse than the prison, because in the prison they have at least certain system in place. Those are persons who are, you're going to be there for years. In the lockups, they don't have any toilets, And so the inmates will use the language that they're going to ride the bike because they don't have a toilet to sit on. And even if there is, it is woefully unsanitary. Let us imagine a public bathroom in Harpetry that everybody is using, and it is not in the best condition. And now imagine what is in the lockup. No, that is not something that even my mind can conceive because I've never used it.
I think you're
can only tell you-
traumatizing both of us and the listeners as you speak, actually.
And so this is the area that they have to, when they're in the cell, in the lockup, they have to eat, they have to sleep, they have to use the bathroom in the same area. And you have 8 to 10 persons. And so it is no wonder why the cells are infested with roaches, rats, chinks. They're not on a mattress. God bless the ones who can have a piece of sponge.
I wanted to bring Carla in because I know that you are constantly in the lockups in the prisons. One, I wanted to know, out of these reports, these recommendations, has there been, to your knowledge, any implementation? And secondly, the same question I asked Mr. Hyatt, is there a real difference between being in your long-term prison versus in the lockups?
Thank you very much. I think that there is no difference, but there is something which I would love still to bring to light before we shift our focus from lockups to prison. Two more elements for the lockups which we need to consider are: one, sometimes minors are detained in a lockup. Now it's happening much less than before, but it was a malpractice which absolutely cannot be considered as possible because a minor should not be locked together with an adult. Secondly, what happened, we discussed quite extensively about mentally ill. 2 elements: no mentally ill is walking through carrying his own referral. So once they are in a lockup, nobody is able to be sure of the pathology, but also what kind of treatment he is supposed to take, because none of them is traveling with an invoice, a receipt, a referral. So whoever is entering in a lockup has to take a long time before being assessed, because they have to discover what was his pathology. The last element is related to LGBTQ people. Those people, in case they are in a lockup, they are together with the rest of the population. And thanks to the stigma, their situation is unbearable, because a transgender or a gay guy, which is together with the general population, is condemned to know that he will have to face abuses, molestation, and all of that. And also this, I consider it as an element that should not be possible if we defend the fact that everybody is innocent until is proved guilty.
And persons living with HIV being denied their medication, Carlo. Yeah? Continue the thought.
So
I just wanted to interject there.
If we talk about the prisons now, the prisons are not different from the lockups. And if you ask me if there are improvements, we work there since 2007. And I saw some efforts. I saw them. I have also to commend the DCS for some of them. But there is an obstacle which is not possible to solve, which is the infrastructure. People are detained in old fort. St. Catherine was a fort, is a fort. Tower Street is a fort. So they were not built with the concept of building a prison. They were the places where the slaves were reaching to Jamaica. So in terms of improving the place, it is basically impossible because there is nothing conducive there. And plus, since the October earthquake, that has been generating an additional problem in terms of overcrowding, because some of the blocks after an inspection have been closed because they might be falling apart. Therefore, a place like Tower Street, which has been mentioned a couple of times, It should receive a range of 800 inmates. The amount of people detained there is above 1,700. We are talking about lack of bathroom, the fact that everybody has to have his own bucket, everybody has to urinate or defecate in front of everybody into the cell. Is not only a health hazard, because it is a health hazard, but it's also an humiliation. Can you imagine that you have to do what you have to do right in front of 7 people? So that is something which cannot be solved as far as the famous new prison is not thought.
Thank you.
I know that
We have to leave it there, Carlo. We're upon time. But I'm going to thank you so much. I'm going to give the last word. Yes. 30 seconds, Carlo.
Tell to Miss Fremantle if she need a legal representation for the person that she mentioned before,
Yes.
that we have a team of attorneys.
Yes, on the
Working
public
on
law
that.
chambers. So we're here to support.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Fremantle, I will give you the last word as we close out. 30 seconds.
Okay, I think that this program was very, very helpful and is a positive step in the right direction. The more we keep talking about these issues, the more it's going to be on the forefront of persons' minds. And I just want to say to the public that we each have a role to play as citizens of this country to look out for the well-being of our most vulnerable. I'm talking about mentally ill persons now in lockups. Many of you listening to my voice now, you have family members that you have forgotten about. You can go and see many lawyers who are willing to take up this case, to take steps to have them come out of these deplorable conditions. There is a way forward. We all have a role to play. Don't forget about your loved ones. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We take the break.
You ever hear Earthquake call and say, "Hello, Miss Lee, yes, it's me, Earthquake. I come in Tuesday around 10. No, sir. Earthquake does arrive unannounced. And when it come, it shake all sense and sensibility out of we. Remain calm, stay inside, and do the DCH. Drop, hover, hold on. Once the shaking starts, you know it's earthquake. Make a quick move to a safe place. Don't run to the door, we are in the exit. Stairs might broke up or full of people. Elevator, avoid that because you might get in and poof, power gone, and you're stuck in that box without ear. Drop, cover, hold on.
A message from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management.
For the Lord is my shepherd.
Labor rights, the bells will ring at the West Kingston Constituency Conference, Thursday, November 21 at 6 p.m. at Tivoli Gardens High. MP Desmond McKenzie leads the charge. West Kingston active and growing stronger. Come here, Prime Minister and Party Leader, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Chairman of Area Council 1, Councillor Winston Ennis, MPs Favel Williams, Everett Warmington, Matthew Samuda, Carencia Morrison, Senator Apka Fitz-Henley, West Kingston Councillors Jermaine Hyatt, Donovan Samuels, and other speakers. West Kingston growing stronger. Constituency Conference, Tivoli Gardens High School, Thursday, November 21 at 6 p.m. Fully active. See you there.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. Very, very important conversation just being had with Carla Golato, Matthew Hyatt, and Renee Fremantle around the inhumane conditions of our lockups. And thanks to Vernon Barrett, one of our listeners on the YouTube chat, who corrected me that it was Agana Barrett, not Barnett, as I said earlier, who died in police custody. And, you know, it's just important. Again, Agana Barrett, that unfortunate situation happened in 1992. Mm-hmm. We're in 2024, and we're still having this sort of conversation. And before we segue, Jade, I just want to say to the listeners that since but certainly since the passage of the Road Traffic Act, we have gotten some complaints at JFJ, for example, being pulled over for a road traffic offense. And by the way, let me be very clear. I always say we must be respectful of our officers. They're putting their lives at risk. But we know sometimes we don't react in the way that our parents would have socialized us to. That is no excuse to be abused. And we've gotten some complaints since the passage of the Road Traffic Act that suggest that people's rights are being violated and they have been detained as a result. Unlawful detention based on some of the experiences that have been relayed to us, and some of the cases that we've had to refer to attorneys within our networks and so on. So I put in context for the listeners to say, listen, any one of us can come in conflict with the law. We're not talking about the most extreme of circumstances, no, such as murder and, the prohibited weapons and so on. That's not what I'm talking about. That's why I use the example of just a road traffic violation, so we can appreciate what we're saying here. Yeah. So I think much more needs to be done.
Absolutely.
So, JFJ, we were privileged and honored to be on a panel discussion last week. Last week it was. Today's Monday, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was convened by the Caribbean Court of Justice. They actually have an academy that is there to ensure that public education is being done. Last year they met in Barbados, it was. And you had the DPP here, Paula Llewellyn, other members from the police force in Jamaica and other Caribbean islands in Barbados, and they came up with what is called the Needham's Point Declaration. And as you know, again, wherever you declare, that's where the declaration is named. Yes. Yeah? And it is really focusing on some criminal justice reforms that each Caribbean island made a pledge to get underway. And the first thing was to treat crime as a public health emergency. But while we're doing that, though, what I like about the declaration, and for those who have an opportunity, I think it should be on the CCJ's website. If not, I will ask them to put it up so we can all have it. While you reform the criminal justice system, you have to balance the right of the accused and the victim in the conversation. And when we were looking through this declaration, Jade, I'm proud to say that despite the horrific recounts that we just heard, Jamaica has certainly moved ahead in having some of these things put in place, but we have a far way to go. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I believe it was point number, forgive me, it's on my phone, and my eyesight is not the best when it's not, font size 20 and 30 and so on. But there's a point here that I want to read through. I think it was 29. Yes. The intersectionality of youth, that's 28. But no, it's not 29. But anyway, it focuses on the child diversion. And Jade, I know that is something we are quite in support of. Yes. The Ministry of Justice is putting it, advancing that particular policy directive. How do we steer our children away from crime? And if they come in conflict with the law, how do you ensure that you have proper rehabilitation programs for them? So that's one I wanted to touch on. The other one, Jade, was around victims' rights. Mm-hmm. And, we've had discussions internally at JFJ. How do we, so a lot of times I hear people say, what about the victims? And so on. But how do we ensure, for example, that Mercer Fraser, her son Mario Dean, died while in police custody? So how do we ensure that those victims, those rights are being protected? So we have the Victim Services Division of the Ministry of Justice, we're aware. But what else can be done to ensure that Miss Fraser, she is kept up to date on the court proceedings? What else you can think of?
I think the challenge is that when we think about victims' rights, we're thinking about it from the perspective of we want to see a specific kind of justice. Mm-hmm. And we don't think about all the steps that it takes to get there and how those things play into the rights of victims as well. And, even as you speak to Miss Fraser, there's a point where this is a matter to deal with the death of your son, but you don't know when the court date is, or the court date has been moved and no one informed you, so you were not able to observe the sitting. There are maybe issues that arise that are legal issues in the case. At what point would a clerk or a prosecutor be able to sit down with the family and explain?
And in fact, it was our intervention with the DPP, Miss Llewellyn, that Miss Fraser has since been kept up to date.
Absolutely.
But that's an important point. Sometimes we don't even understand, the criminal justice system to even know how their rights are being protected.
Exactly. So you might be in the court at every sitting, but you have no clue what took place in it. So I think some of those levels of support are still missing when it comes to victims' rights.
Yeah.
I think another thing that even briefly arose before we came here is still, as much as their work has improved over the years, the response of the police, not just in domestic issues, but in any issues,
Yes.
depending on the complainant, depending on the nature of the issue, there seems to be a kind of if we feel like to do it nature to some of the reports that we're getting from some of our clients, and to think that we're still getting those kinds of reports is concerning. So I will say, while we have seen a level of improvement, that's still something that's necessary in advancing victim rights as well, because you go to the police as a victim and you make a report and it's not taken seriously,
Yeah.
or it's not taken at all. How can that victim be supported?
Improvements are there, but still a long way to go.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I think we'll do some more. But we're coming up on time. But I just want to say in about 20 seconds that as at November 18, 166 civilians have been killed by members of the security forces. So we are expected to exceed the numbers that we last saw in 2017 of 168. And when that is done, it means that this is the highest that we have seen since 2013 in terms of people killed by the security force. And I know some people are listening in, but listen, what we're saying is use the body-worn cameras, activate them. At some point, we have to say that, listen, we support law enforcement, but we need accountability. That's the message that we have to collectively be singing. Just this morning, again, we heard a release from Indicom. We saw a release from Indicom, rather, that 2 police officers have been charged for the fatal shootings of 3 people. And notwithstanding that, we hear that these individuals may have run afoul of the law before. That is why we have the justice system. And it's quite concerning that the police officers have also been charged for basically planting a firearm. And this is not the first we've heard. We've had instances of that over the years. So long way to go, but we need the body-worn cameras to ensure that there's that independent evidence, an account, rather, of what may have taken place in those particular circumstances.
Absolutely.
Yeah? So the trivia, Jade, before I lastly say about the run, I'm excited to be out of breath.
So we do have trivia winners. So the first trivia question was, what agency is responsible for the management of correctional facilities? The correct answer was the Department of Correctional Services, and I believe the winner was...
No, I corrected it. The same person won.
Okay. So I'll give the second answer as well. So the wait, I can't give the second answer because I've forgotten the question.
The second, I don't remember the exact question, but JFJ, we know that, again, we have some police officers who may have been implicated in misconduct, extrajudicial killings over the years. And from JFJ's standpoint, those officers ought not to be promoted until those matters came to a conclusion. So in 2017, we filed a court matter for an officer who was accused of murder in the past. It went all the way up to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council ruled in 2019 that if it is that you are involved in some misconduct, you ought not to be promoted. And that was the Privy Council matter that that we supported. So a little bit of a tidbit or history for JFJ, yeah?
Yes, indeed.
And news commentator.
Yes, news commentator
won
both trivias.
I think next week we're going to be saying, and can we do that to say news commentator, no response next week? I saw one of your colleagues saying 1844. That was what, 4 years after we got, 6 years after
emancipation.
So thank you so much. Nice try. We appreciate it. All right. I see OMS Associates saying that we can assist by encouraging citizens to be proactive in seeking out information for themselves. Yes, definitely. That's the purpose of this show. So thanks for the feedback. Lastly, before we go, December 8.
Yes, 8.
I'm looking energetic, but I'm not because I can't run or walk that long distance. But just to indicate that we have our Run for Rights on December 8th, it's going to be at the Police Officers Club at 6:30. Come and get a warm up. Jenny will be there with us. Mayor Andrew Swaby is one of our event ambassadors, and we also have a performance by Kevin Downswell. So you can sing the gospel songs and get excited about running for your rights. Again, I'll be out of breath, but I'll be running along. I won't even be walking. I'll be running, Jade.
I don't believe you, but we'll see.
Won't.
We'll believe it when we see it.
But yes, so you can call our offices. You can go on My Race Results, that website. They're administering the race for us and sign up. So register. Individual registration, $2,000. If you're registering a group of 20 and more, it's $1,500. You have your T-shirts. They're so beautifully designed. You get a race time bibs and all of that kind of excitement.
Yes, and you can see everything on our social media, on our Instagram, JA for Justice, and on our Twitter, JA for Justice.
As I said, get excited for justice, yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much for listening in. We appreciate you. My name is Michael Jackson.
And I'm Jade Williams. Thank you for joining.
Jamaicans for justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
Who will win top station in Area 2? Who will attain the title of top division in Area 2?